My name is Carol Simmons. I'm 43 years old, and I need you to picture something. It's March 7th, my birthday. I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot of a Applebee's in Columbus, Ohio with $47 in my bank account and a cardboard box on my passenger seat. That box had 11 years of my life in it. A coffee mug my daughter painted for me in 3rd grade. A framed photo of my team at the company Christmas party. A sticky note on the inside that said, "You've got this, Carol," that I had written to myself on my very first day. 3 hours earlier, my boss had called me into his office, slid that box across his desk, and said, "Carol, you're too old for where this company is going." I drove home and I cried for 3 hours straight. Then I made one phone call. And 3 years later, I walked back into that building with a manila folder in my hand. Purchase papers. My name at the top. New owner. He was still there. Same desk. Same office. Except now he was working for me. And I handed him the exact same box. But I'll get to that. First, you need to understand what kind of man Craig Dunbar really was, and what he didn't know about the woman he fired on her birthday. I had worked at Dunbar and Associates Marketing in Columbus, Ohio for 11 years. Since I was 32 years old. I started as a junior account manager making $41,000 a year and worked my way up to senior director of client strategy making $94,000. I managed 14 accounts. I had a team of 6 people under me. 3 of our biggest clients, Riverside Health System, Franklin County Schools, and a regional grocery chain called Fresh Mart, had come to the company specifically because of relationships I had built personally. 11 years. 14 accounts. 6 people. 3 anchor clients. Craig Dunbar fired me on a Tuesday morning in March and had security walk me to my car by 10:15 a.m. He told HR it was a restructuring decision. He told my team I had chosen to pursue other opportunities. He told the clients nothing, just quietly reassigned my accounts to a 27-year-old named Brandon who had been with the company 8 months. What Craig Dunbar did not tell anyone was the real reason. I'll get to that. The real reason Craig Dunbar fired me had nothing to do with restructuring. It had everything to do with a meeting that happened 6 weeks earlier. On January 19th, Craig called an all-hands meeting in the main conference room on the 4th floor. 31 employees sitting around that long oak table. He stood at the head of it in his navy suit and his gold cufflinks and announced that the company was bringing in a new partner. A private equity firm out of Cincinnati called Meridian Capital Group. They were buying a 40% stake in Dunbar and Associates for $2.3 million. Everyone clapped. Craig smiled. I did not clap. 'Cause 2 days before that meeting I had found something. I was working late on a Thursday night, 9:47 p.m., almost nobody left in the office. I went to the printer on the 4th floor to grab a client proposal I had sent. The printer had jammed and there was another document stuck inside it. I pulled it out. It was a financial disclosure summary. Dunbar and Associates internal numbers. Revenue projections, client retention rates, liability breakdown. And on page 3 there was a line that stopped me cold. Client dependency risk, 3 accounts representing 61% of total annual revenue. Those 3 accounts were Riverside Health System, Franklin County Schools, and Fresh Mart. My 3 accounts. The ones I had built from scratch over 11 years. The disclosure was going to Meridian Capital Group as part of their due diligence before the deal closed. And nowhere in that document was my name mentioned. Not once. Those relationships were being presented as company assets, stable, transferable, guaranteed. But they weren't guaranteed without me. I knew those clients personally. I knew Carol at Riverside who called me on my cell when she had a problem. I knew Superintendent Harris at Franklin County who had renewed the contract 3 years in a row because he trusted me specifically. I knew Dave Kowalski at Fresh Mart who had turned down 2 other agencies because he said I was the only one who actually listened. I put the document back exactly where I found it. I went home that night and I could not sleep. 2:14 a.m. I sat up in bed and I wrote 3 pages in my notebook. Everything I knew. Everything I had built. Every relationship, every contract, every renewal. 11 years of work documented in my own handwriting by the light of my bedside lamp. Then I called my attorney the next morning. Her name was Susan Park. Business law. Office on High Street in Columbus. I had used her twice before for contract reviews. She was sharp, fast, and did not waste words. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Carol, do you have documentation of your client relationships? Emails, contracts, personal correspondence?" I said, 11 years worth. She said, "Good. Don't do anything yet. Just keep collecting." 2 weeks later, Craig called me into his office. He had clearly found out I had seen that document. I still don't know how. Maybe someone saw me at the printer that night. Maybe he had cameras. Maybe Brandon, the 27-year-old, had said something. Craig sat behind his desk with his hands folded. Same way he always sat when he was about to deliver something he had already decided. He said, "Carol, we're moving in a new direction. We need people who can grow with us. I think you've taken this role as far as it can go." I said, "Craig, I have 14 active accounts and 3 anchor clients who have renewed specifically because of me." He said, "We appreciate everything you've contributed." I said, "Riverside, Franklin County, and Freshmart alone represent over 60% of your annual revenue." He smiled. That tight practice smile. He said, "We'll handle the transition carefully." Then he slid the cardboard box across his desk. I looked at that box for a long moment. Then I picked it up. I put my coffee mug in it, my framed photo, my sticky note. I walked out of his office, down the elevator, through the lobby, into the parking lot. Security followed me to my car. I put the box on the passenger seat. I drove to the Applebee's 2 blocks away and sat in the parking lot for 3 hours. $47 in my bank account. 11 years gone in 20 minutes. And Craig Dunbar upstairs right now, probably already on the phone with Meridian Capital Group, telling them everything was fine. But here's what Craig did not know. The morning after he fired me, I called Dave Kowalski at Freshmart. "Just to check in," I said. Just to let him know I was moving on to new things. Dave said, "Carol, wherever you go, I go. You know that, right?" I said, "Dave, I appreciate that more than you know." Then I called Carol at Riverside Health System. She said, "They already called me this morning, trying to introduce me to someone named Brandon." "Carol, I don't know any Brandon." "I know you." I said, "I know. Give me 60 days. Then I called Superintendent Harris at Franklin County Schools. He said 4 words. He said, "What do you need?" I hung up the phone, sat in my car, and for the first time since March 7th, I smiled. The day after Craig Dunbar fired me, I opened a business account at Huntington Bank on Broad Street in Columbus. I deposited $200 cash, everything I had that wasn't already committed to rent and utilities. The account number started with 7734. I stared at that number for a long time sitting in my car in the Huntington Bank parking lot. $200 in a brand new business account. $47 left in my personal checking. Cardboard box in my trunk. And 3 clients who had just told me they would follow me anywhere. Most people would have been terrified. I was terrified too. But underneath the terror there was something else. Something quiet and steady and completely certain. I went home that evening and sat at my kitchen table with my notebook. The same one I had written 3 pages in at 2:14 a.m. I opened to a fresh page. I wrote 2 words at the top. Simmons Strategies. That was it. That was my company name. Took me 4 seconds to decide. 11 years of being Carol Simmons who built other people's strategies, now it was mine. I called Susan Park the next morning. She said, "How fast do you want to move?" I said, 60 days. She said, "Then we start today." We filed the LLC paperwork on March 12th, 5 days after Craig handed me that box. Simmons Strategies LLC. State of Ohio. Primary office, my kitchen table on Fairview Avenue in Columbus. Susan helped me draft 3 proposal letters. One for Freshmart. One for Riverside Health System. One for Franklin County Schools. Each letter was specific, personalized, laid out exactly what I had done for them over the years, specific campaigns, specific results, specific numbers. Freshmart's in-store traffic had increased 23% during the 2 years we ran their regional campaign. Riverside Health System's patient acquisition numbers had gone up 31% after we redesigned their outreach strategy. Franklin County Schools had saved $84,000 in vendor costs through the consolidated communications plan I had built for them. My work. My numbers. On paper with my name at the top. I sent all 3 letters on March 19. Dave Kowalski at Freshmart called me back in 4 hours. He said, "Carol, where do I sign?" Carol at Riverside called the next morning at 8:47 a.m. She said, "I already told Brandon we were going in a different direction." He sounded like he was going to cry. I felt bad, but not that bad. Superintendent Harris sent a signed letter of intent by FedEx on March 22. 15 days after Craig Dunbar fired me, all 3 anchor clients had followed me out the door. 61% of Dunbar and Associates' annual revenue. Gone. I didn't celebrate. I went back to my kitchen table and kept working. 'Cause Susan Park had told me something important. She said, "Carol, when those clients leave, Meridian Capital Group is going to pull out of the deal. And when Meridian pulls out, Craig is going to be in serious trouble. He leveraged the company to get that investment. Without it, the debt structure doesn't hold." I said, "How long?" She said, 6 months. Maybe 8. I said, "And then what happens?" She paused 1 second. Then she said, "Then someone with capital and the right relationships could buy what's left at a significant discount." I sat very still at my kitchen table. I said, "Susan, how do I become that someone?" She said, "You already are. You just need the money." I didn't have the money, but I knew someone who might help me get it. His name was Gerald Watkins. He was 67 years old. Semi-retired. He had built and sold 2 marketing firms in the Midwest over 30 years. I had met him at a conference in Cincinnati 4 years earlier, and we had stayed in touch. He sent me a Christmas card every year. Called me on my birthday. Ironically, this year his voicemail was sitting on my phone from the morning of March 7th, the same day Craig fired me. I called him back that evening. I said, "Gerald, I need 30 minutes of your time." He said, "Carol, for you I've got all evening." What's going on? I talked for 22 minutes straight. When I finished, there was a brief silence. Then Gerald said, "How much do you need?" I said, "I don't know yet, but I think I'll know in about 6 months. He said, "Call me when you know. I'll be here." I hung up the phone, looked around my kitchen. Cardboard box was still sitting on the counter by the refrigerator. I hadn't unpacked it yet. My coffee mug. My framed photo. My sticky note that said, "You've got this, Carol." I took the sticky note out of the box. I put it on the wall above my kitchen table. And I went back to work. Took 7 months and 11 days. Not 6 months like Susan predicted. 7 months and 11 days. I know because I marked it in my notebook on October 18th when my phone rang at 9:23 a.m. It was a number I didn't recognize. Cincinnati area code. I picked up. A man said, "Miss Simmons, my name is Robert Chen. I'm a managing partner at Meridian Capital Group. I wonder if you have a few minutes to talk." I set my coffee mug down very carefully on my kitchen table. I said, "Mr. Chen, I have all the time in the world." He said, "I'll be direct with you. We pulled out of our deal with Dunbar and Associates in August. Client situation made the investment untenable. We've been monitoring the company since then, and frankly, the situation has deteriorated significantly." I said, "I'm sorry to hear that." He said, "Ms. Simmons, we've done our research. We know who built those client relationships. We know why they left. And we know what you've built in the past 7 months. Simmons Strategies in 7 months had grown from my kitchen table to a leased office space on Gay Street in downtown Columbus. 4 employees. 9 active clients. Monthly revenue of $47,000. From $200 in a bank account to $47,000 a month. Robert Chin said, "We'd like to discuss a potential acquisition of Dunbar and Associates assets. We think with the right leadership a restructured version of that company could be valuable. And we think you're the right leadership." I was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. Then I said, "Mr. Chin, tell me what you're looking at in terms of numbers." He said the asset purchase would be in the range of $380,000. We would provide $280,000 in capital. We'd need a partner to come in with the remaining $100,000 and take operational control. I called Gerald Watkins before I even hung up with Robert Chin. Gerald said, "I told you to call me when you knew the number." I said, "Gerald, the number is $100,000. He didn't hesitate for a single second. He said, "Done." "When do we sign?" The acquisition closed on November 4th. Simmons Strategies acquired the remaining assets of Dunbar and Associates Marketing, the office space on 4th Street, the remaining client contracts, the equipment, and the brand for $380,000. My name at the top of every page. I walked into that building on a Monday morning in November wearing a black blazer and carrying a manila folder. The receptionist at the front desk, a young woman named Tiffany who had always been kind to me, looked up and her eyes went wide. She said, "Ms. Simmons?" I smiled. I said, "Good morning, Tiffany. Is Mr. Dunbar in his office?" She said, "Yes, ma'am." "Should I call up?" I said, "No, thank you. I know the way." I took the elevator to the 4th floor. Walked down the hallway I had walked down for 11 years. Past the conference room with a long oak table. Past the printer where I had found that document on a Thursday night at 9:47 p.m. I knocked on Craig Dunbar's office door. He said, "Come in." I opened the door. Craig was sitting behind his desk in his navy suit and his gold cufflinks. He looked up. The color left his face so fast it was like watching someone turn off a light. I walked in. I sat down across from him, in the same chair I had sat in when he slid that cardboard box across the desk 8 months earlier. I placed the manila folder on his desk. I said, "Craig, I want to introduce myself. My name is Carol Simmons. I'm the new owner of this building and everything in it." He looked at the folder. Then at me. Then back at the folder. I said, "I've reviewed the remaining staff contracts. I'm keeping most of the team. Tiffany at the front desk. Creative team on 3. The account coordinators." He said, "And me?" I reached into my bag. I placed a cardboard box on his desk. Same size as the one he had given me. Same plain brown sides. I said, "Craig, we're moving in a new direction. I think you've taken this role as far as it can go." The silence in that office was the most satisfying thing I had ever heard in my life. He looked at that box for a long time. I stood up. I straightened my blazer. I said, "Security will walk you out. Take your time." I walked out of his office. Down the hallway. Past the conference room. I stopped at the printer on the 4th floor. I put my hand on it for just a second. Then I smiled and kept walking. The first Monday I ran that building as owner I arrived at 7:43 a.m. Tiffany had already made coffee. Creative team was already at their desks. The account coordinators were already on calls. I stood in the lobby for a moment just looking at it all. 11 years I had walked into this building as an employee. Head down. Working. Building. Giving everything I had to someone else's name on the door. Now my name was on the contract that owned every square foot of it. I walked to my office, Craig's old office, 4th floor, corner window overlooking 4th Street, and I sat down behind the desk. Someone had already cleared everything out. Clean desk. Empty shelves. Except for one thing. Tiffany had put a small vase of yellow tulips on the corner of the desk with a handwritten card that said, "Welcome home, Miss Simmons. We've been waiting for you." I held that card for a long time. Then I opened my bag and took out 3 things. My coffee mug, the one my daughter painted in 3rd grade, little handprints in blue and green around the rim. My framed photo, the company Christmas party, my team laughing, arms around each other. And my sticky note, slightly crumpled now, edges soft from 8 months, on my kitchen wall, that said, "You've got this, Carol." I put the mug on the desk. I put the photo on the shelf. I put the sticky note on the wall above the window. And I sat back in my chair and looked out at 4th Street in Columbus, Ohio on a cold November morning. Now let me tell you what happened to Craig Dunbar. He left that building on that Monday morning carrying his cardboard box. Purity walked him to his car, the same parking lot, the same walk he had arranged for me 8 months earlier. He did not say anything on his way out. He did not look back. 3 months later, I heard through mutual contacts in the Columbus marketing community that Craig had taken a position at a smaller agency on the east side of town. Regional accounts. Entry-level clients. Salary roughly half of what he had been making at Dunbar and Associates. I did not feel sorry for him. But I want to be honest with you about something. People always ask me, "Carol, weren't you angry? Didn't you want to make him suffer? Didn't you want to call those clients yourself and tell them everything he had done?" And the answer is no. Not because I'm a saint, but because I understood something sitting in that Applebee's parking lot on March 7th with $47 in my bank account and a cardboard box on my passenger seat. I understood that Craig Dunbar had not taken anything from me that I could not rebuild. He took my job. He could not take my relationships. He took my salary. He could not take my 11 years of knowledge. He took my title. He could not take my reputation. Everything he tried to use against me, my age, my loyalty, my investment in that company, became the exact foundation I built Simmons Strategies on. He fired me because he thought I was finished. He was telling me I was ready. Simmons Strategies today has 23 employees. Offices on Gay Street in Columbus. Annual revenue just under $2.1 million. Freshmart just renewed for their 4th consecutive year. Riverside Health System expanded their contract in September, largest single contract in company history. Superintendent Harris sent me a handwritten note last Christmas. Said, "Carol, Franklin County is better because of you. Merry Christmas." I have that note on my wall, right next to the sticky note. If you've ever been told you're too old, too slow, too loyal, too much of something that someone else couldn't handle, I want you to hear this. They were not describing your weakness. They were describing their fear of your strength. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because of who I am. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what time is it where you are? And have you ever had someone underestimate you so badly that it became the best thing that ever happened to you? 'Cause I want to read every single one of those comments. If this story moved you, if you felt that parking lot moment or that Monday morning walking back into that building, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Honor Unveiled. We'll see you in the next one.